What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. It's me, your friend Jason, and I am very excited to be here because today's going to be a fun one. We're bringing to the show someone who I've been watching online for a while. I think they're pretty sharp, and we're going to be learning about something that I think is just, even if it's not something you're going to do, it's a good thing to know. So let's get right into it. Let me bring to the stage here Dev. Dev, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so happy to have you here. So for folks who maybe aren't familiar with you and your work, do you want to give us a bit of a background on yourself?
Sure. So my name is actually Dev, and I'm a dev. I like to start off sometimes by saying that. I've been building full stack JavaScript applications for about 7 years now. I did a little bit of like PHP before that, so
Hmm.
that was a fun time. But I quickly like moved into full stack JavaScript, started building some toy applications, got some freelance projects here and there, um, and then like I've done professional work, volunteer work, all kinds of stuff here and there. And mostly these days, I'm just like uh, trying to take my full stack JavaScript experience and trying to find newer, better ways to take advantage of the fact that we have the same language on both front end and the back end, or client and server, and use that to the best of its capability.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why not? If you can use JavaScript everywhere, we should try to put it in every conceivable location, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I also
But
got into a bit of content creation like a couple years ago. I've been really on and off with that. Just tough to find time. And
I think, I mean,
yeah.
it's a job, right? Like
Hmm.
you got to really prioritize it to stay consistent. And I think it's not always the most important thing.
Hmm.
But so, okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I guess, just a little bit more about what you just said. So you
Hmm.
just said JavaScript works. We can use JavaScript on every part of our stack. So I guess that sort of started with Node way
Hmm.
back in the day, and but it does feel like that sort of shifted even more recently with things like ES modules and
Hmm.
stuff like Vite and sort of the, I guess, the democratization of things like SSR, where it's not as much of a heroic task to set it up on your own anymore.
Hmm.
But I guess, why do you think people are pushing in this way? Like, what's the big driver for trying to get JavaScript everywhere?
I mean, I just think the driver is companies trying to spend less money on their engineering teams so that they
Mm,
can have like just one team or one group of developers that know JavaScript that can just do everything instead of having to have like two separate backend and front end teams. Like it sounds appealing to some people, but the people who are managing and paying for these engineers are not like, they probably prefer if they had less people to deal with, and the same people can just do everything that they need. And that's like one sort of push, or one perspective on it. The second I just see is like from the perspective of the developer or the engineer itself, that for us it's so much easier to just build features in this kind of full stack vertical slice, rather than building a front end piece and then building a back end piece, or worse,
hmm
building a front end piece then having to talk to a different back end team to do the back end piece for it, and then having that back and forth multiple times. So I think it's just like an all around win, both for the engineers and the people paying the engineers. um,
hmm
Obviously there are some downsides, that JavaScript is not the best backend language, but there are a lot of people working really hard on making it a good backend language.
Yeah, and I think, having worked on a lot of teams that dealt with big production apps and backends
Hmm.
and things, I've never actually seen a production problem where the language was the problem.
Hmm.
Like, when we're talking about performance, it is vanishingly rare that it's the language's fault. It's usually that
Hmm.
one of the engineers did something that, you know, it
Yeah.
would have been wrong in any language. Right?
Yeah.
So when you get down to the point that the language really is the limiting factor, sure. But yeah, it seems like that's not nearly as often as the way we talk about benchmarking would imply.
Yeah, and honestly, having a slow language, that's a great problem to have. It's just a lot of people pretend that they have that problem even though they don't, and it ends up hurting them.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's the sort of like, well, I don't want to actually solve my problem, so I'm going to pretend that it's the language's fault and refactor this app, so that in 6 or 7 months we can get back to where we were with the app and realize that no, the same problem still exists. It wasn't the language.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little bit about what, like, when we talk about JavaScript at every layer of the stack, that's something that you could do in a very bespoke way by standing up a JavaScript front end, and then you could stand up a Node back end, and you could write serverless functions if you needed to glue things together. But recently, it feels like that's all been growing together. And I say recently, meaning like the last few years, where the new trend now is for everybody to ship a metaframework. And the metaframework is going to give us front-end JavaScript, back-end JavaScript, the data access layer, the business logic layer, all those things that we would expect. And it's all kind of baked into one package. And that's either done super explicitly, like when you look at something like, I don't know, Astro, there's very clear, like, this is the back end, this is the front end. When you look at something like some of the newer React metaframeworks, there's sort of almost like a mixing of it, where like some of it's server, some of it's front end. And I think that is, and that's a conversation for another show. But what do you think is the, like, how do you feel about metaframeworks in general? Like, what's your general vibe on them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally a big fan of it. I have spent way too long having like two separate backend and front end repositories and just suffering under that pain. Again, I understand that that's an appealing concept to many teams, many companies out there, but I think this divide between like the front end and the back end being two separate things, this has always been a limitation of the tools that we are using. And I think oftentimes like we should separate out projects not based on the tools but based on the teams. Like if you have if you can logically separate two different teams that can operate kind of independently, then you should have like, okay, you have your own repository, and if these two teams don't always talk to each other, then they'll be happily on their ways. But if you just have a single team building the entire thing, this backend and front end split didn't always make sense to me, because it just increased the amount of work that I had to do instead of just and what it demonstrated to me was there's a lack of capability here. Like the tools that we are using are not aligned to help me build a good full stack experience. They're aligned to help me build a good front end and the good back end experience, which is not what I'm actually doing. Like I'm not building independent applications. And I think some of it was also kind of a response to the microservices hype, where everyone just wanted to split everything to the finest bits. And we kind of had a like hard swing back from that, obviously, about like 4 years ago or so. And that's another reason why the metaframework exists, I guess. But also one kind of misunderstanding that I've seen with metaframeworks is that you're mixing your front end and back end concerns together, or maybe the framework is recommending that you should mix front end and back end together, which is not really what they're doing. What they're doing is helping you build a better front end using a server, which I think is a different kind of mentality from like mixing your front end and back end together. Like you can still have a separate back end, either a logically separated or physically separate back end. What a meta framework is doing is just that a server is going to help you build a better front end or deliver a better front end experience. Whether you want to mix your back end concerns into that, that's up to you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the thing that's interesting about this is that it sort of addresses one set of problems and revisits another set that we had sort of set aside. Because one of the big challenges, one of the reasons that I think PHP got so demonized back in the day is that we used to write PHP apps the way that we're currently recommending that people write React apps, where it's sort of like make your database call and then slam that database call right into the middle of your client output and then put this server thing over here and this client thing here, and it was all one big file. And, justifiably so, that gets extremely difficult to reason about and maintain over time. Which is why I've kind of found it fascinating to see the way that different teams are approaching this, and how are people thinking about how do we keep this stuff maintainable, right? And the in some cases, like the next team seems to say, that's not our problem, you figure it out. And teams like the Astro team are saying like, no, here are some very strict rules on how things are split up. The Remix team, or I guess the React Router team, has some like pretty strong opinions about like use this API exactly and things don't mix. We'll see what happens when they introduce React Server components. But it feels like we're sort of having to think about how do we reintroduce the flexibility of everything in one place without reintroducing all the problems of everything in one place that led to the horribly negative PR campaign that PHP's been battling back from, and it took Lamborghinis to overcome.
The funny thing about this whole like conversation is that we've been through this exact thing before. When React first came out, like no one wanted to put logic and templates together. But once we started doing that, we had a whole like crisis of, okay, how do we organize this thing? And we came up with like higher order components, render props, all these patterns to try to smart and dumb components, all these patterns to help us like fit that into our head better and like better figure out what the concerns, how they should be separated in this new componentized world. And I think that's just like we're just seeing a repeat of that, but across the network boundary.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's like, what is code except a communication tool, right?
Yeah.
And so figuring out how to communicate in ways that keep all of the context we need and not just the kinds we're focusing on right now is an ever like it's a permanent problem. We're never going to solve it. But so I think the reason this is also fascinating to me is that there's also been this sort of acceleration very recently where it felt like at first building a meta framework was a huge task, required tons of funding. You had to be like one of the best in the world to be able to even consider doing it. And even most of them would wave off of it because it was just too many things to manage. But then Vite came out. Yeah. And so we got tool like the ES build, the Vite, and a few other tools in that ecosystem that suddenly now we can build meta frameworks in a fairly straightforward way. And then you got into my DMs and you started talking to me about a new tool that kind of brings all this together and gives us a little bit more. So can you tell us a little bit about what that tool is and kind of what it does?
Yeah. So I think you did a great job on kind of showing the impact that Vite had. But there was one other kind of milestone that happened after Vite, which was Nitro, which is basically Nuxt.js deciding that it wants to be modular and like democratize everything, all its internals. And it's like the web server part of Nitro completely split, or the web server part of Nuxt completely split off into a spin-off project called Nitro and had its own like independent development process, and then had a whole ecosystem called Unjs that's split up around it for all like little utility things. And that had a similar impact because we saw Analog, which is the Angular framework that Brandon Roberts is working on. It picked up Vite and Nitro and built up an architecture similar to Nuxt. And it really, like now you have this one person who's on his off time just building a meta framework. So these two tools kind of,
And like the really impressive thing about it too is that, we had Brandon on the show and it is full featured. Like you can do a lot. And for folks who have been looking at Angular as like, it's Angular, it's like yesterday's code. When you look at what is happening inside of Analog, it's true. It feels modern. It feels new. And so the fact that Brandon was able to do that in his spare time as a, more or less a team of one is just ultra impressive.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, just the Vite community's fascination with building cross or framework agnostic tooling. That's we are seeing the power of. But I think what happened like about a year or 2 years ago is the team behind Solid Start, they were trying to build a meta framework, and what they kept running into is that there's just, even with Vite, there's too much work here. There's uh, like you're still spending a lot of time debugging why isn't deploying to Netlify, or not deploying to Cloudflare, or not deploying to a specific building adapters and all of those things. And that's really the part that Nitro takes care of, right? So it was pretty obvious that Vite and Nitro are these two fundamental pieces that we need for any sort of framework to be built on top of, and anyone else is just going to be rebuilding these two pieces on their own. Whether that's I guess that's only Next.js at this point, which is not using Vite, but everyone else has moved to Vite. And whoever's not using Nitro probably has either their own server or just gives you a handler like, hey, plug this into whatever server you want. But this one of the people on the Solid Start team, Nikhil Saraf, he really likes React. He really liked server components. He wanted to experiment with server components, but he didn't want to bring in Next.js. He didn't want to come with bring all of Next.js's opinions into his project. He wanted his own kind of way to play around with server components and the new React features, and build on top of those instead of using Next.js. And that's a similar mindset that I was in when I first discovered this and I started playing around with this. And he had already tried to build server frameworks multiple times before. He did a talk at ViteConf last year, which I highly recommend if you wanna. It's pretty short as well, but if you want a quick history on why Vinxi exists and where it came from, that talk is a fantastic intro to it. So yeah, he had built server frameworks, he had his own experience, and he was looking around at what other people are doing with Vite and Nitro. And at the same time, he was trying to contribute to Solid Start, which is trying really hard to be like a framework that doesn't need a lot of maintenance, because it's a very small team working on it. So yeah, I don't know how much I can go into what the inspiration exactly behind Vinxi was, but yeah, that's kind of the background that Vinxi was kind of born out of. That we have these two fundamental tools, we just need a way to put them together, find a better abstraction that we can build frameworks on top of, that we can bring our own opinions and still have all these fancy capabilities like React Server components.
Got it. And so basically, Vinxi is taking the building blocks of Vite and Nitro and some additional goodness, so that just like Brandon did with Analog, any one of us can say, I really like the way that Svelte does this thing, but I wish SvelteKit was different. So I'm going to build my own flavor of Svelte meta framework. I can just plug in a thing and go. Or I want to build my own remix, my own Next.js, and I can put RSC support in without having to become an expert in how RSC works.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Tanner Linsley is doing with TanStack Start. He wants a React framework, he wants server components, and he saw Vinxi, and he's just building on top of it, which is amazing. There are two production frameworks, Solid Start and TanStack Start, being built on top of this right now, and I'm sure there will be more.
All right, well, I could probably ask a million more questions, but it's probably at this point easier to just start actually looking at it. So let's dive in, and I'm going to switch us over into this view here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just remind everyone that this episode, like every episode, is being live captioned. The URL is scrolling across the bottom of the page here. Somebody forgot their muffler today. Okay. And that captioning is being done by Amanda from White Coat Captioning. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. And it is sponsored by Netlify. So head over to the Learn with Jason site, and maybe give a little click over to Netlify and say what's up. Tell them I sent you. So now we're talking to Dev. So here is Dev's Twitter profile. We are talking about Vinxi. Here's the Vinxi website. Let me actually put that one up on screen for a second. Here's the Vinxi website. And so we're going to put the Vinxi website up on the screen for a second. It's built by Nikhil. Here is Nikhil's talk, or Nikhil's profile, so you can check that out. And the rest of these we can get into. This is the episode. You can search for this on the Learn with Jason site, hit Command K and type in analog, and you'll find this episode. This is what Brandon is building, metaframework on top of Angular. This is the talk that I'm gonna, my thing for capturing links in the Learn with Jason Discord isn't working as well as I want. So this is what you should Google if you want to find ViteConf Nikhil Saraf is what got me to this talk. So, go find it, go check it out. And now, with that all being said, Dev, I want to build a metaframework. Like, let's see if we can out Tanner Lindsley in the remaining.
Let's do it.
The remaining like 40 minutes that we have. We got longer than that. We got an hour.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
God damn, let's roll. That's plenty of time. Tanner, we're coming for you.
Perfect.
All right, what should I do first?
Start a new NPM project. We're gonna start from scratch. We have the only thing we will have as a baseline is Vinxi itself. That's it.
Okay, so is there like an npm create command for Vinxi, or do I just like go
just
empty?
A blank npm project, like npm init.
Okay, so let me make a project. We're gonna call this build your own metaframework. Get into it. We're gonna git init, and then I'm going to npm init. All right, and then let me actually open this one up. GitHub.
Yeah, we're doing like the Vite starter, which is like you can start a Vite application by just having an empty folder with an HTML or JavaScript file, something like that.
Got it.
Cool.
Okay. So this is where I'm at right now. I got nothing in here.
Yeah, just add a type module in here somewhere, because it's gonna complain if you don't. Yeah.
Okay. Type module.
Because now let's just create an HTML file, index.html, something like that. We're gonna start a like bare bones HTML single page application setup. You can put in anything in here. Sure.
Okay, and then we're just going to copy this, and we'll do an H1 so that we can actually see what's on the screen.
Cool. So the only thing we need to add now is a file called app.config.ts in your root. This is going to be like your main configuration file. You can also use vite.config, so Vite's configuration file, but any Vinxi project, like the convention is that you're going to use app.config, so we can clearly see that it's going to be a Vinxi project.
Got it.
Let's install Vinxi as well. So npm install Vinxi or whatever package manager you're using.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah. It should be pretty quick.
In here. Yep.
Okay. We go. And we're gonna have, I think it's the default. Okay. So in your app.config.ts, just write export default create app. And do you have auto imports on?
We're going to find out.
There we go. Create app from Vinxi. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the core piece of abstraction, or the core concept that we need to talk about here when using Vinxi, is a Vinxi router. What a Vinxi router does is you can have multiple routers in your application. So you pass a routers property here as inside your create app configuration. And this is going to be an array.
Okay.
Let's give it like the first object. So this is your configuration for a Vinxi router. We can give it a type. And if you use autocomplete here, it's going to tell you that there are 4 types of routers that you can give it. We're going to go with a SPA, or a single page app.
Okay.
And let's give it a name. Let's call it client. Say every router can have a name. And let's give it a handler. So this handler is going to be your index.html file. So just / or index.html.
Got it. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Nice. And this is like our first Vinxi router. Let's now save this and npx Vinxi dev in our terminal. So use the Vinxi's dev server to start it up.
Got it. Okay,
can
I'm
also
just going to
add
go
it-
ahead and
yeah.
set up. I'm going to do one of these so that I don't forget. So it's Vinxi dev,
Yes.
no flags.
No flags.
All right, so
And
let's npm
let's run that.
dev. Okay, we got
Yes.
localhost 3000, so I'm going to head out here.
And this should be your HTML file.
Holy buckets.
So this is
Like-
just a Vite app. There's nothing really fancy here.
But this, I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that I think a lot of us forget, I definitely forget, is that when we run that npm create command and get a Vite app or a React app or whatever it is that we're using, we're getting, it's just code, right? Like, there's no magic. What we just did here is we're configuring, like, run a single page app style off of index.html.
Yeah.
Easy, done, whatever it is. And we don't have to have a lot of files. We don't need, all that config and stuff that comes in is for convenience. The ESLint config, the prettier config, all that stuff. That's to make our lives easier, not a requirement for building.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can just create a JavaScript file somewhere, or even TypeScript file. You can create a TSX file, and you can let's add like something, I don't know, src/index.tsx. We can go off of that.
Okay.
Add just a console login here or something.
Okay.
Like, we don't have anything else installed, right? We just have a JavaScript file.
That's
and
true.
In our index.html, we can just say script src equals.
I guess I can
src
do.
index.
You don't have to do this anymore. You can like do the script. What is it? Type. Wait, how
Type
does
equals
it?
module. Yeah.
Type module, and then I just do the source.
Literally, it pointed to
And-
the TSX file.
Oh, you just get to go right to it. We don't have to compile or anything. It's smart enough to know.
No.
Oh, it doesn't like that. What doesn't it like?
You might the / like the self-closing tags don't actually exist, I think.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
because
we
it's
had
script
a-
tag. Yeah.
We had to think about that on Twitter recently. There we go.
Hey, all
And
right.
if
So
you,
then when I open this up, get into my console, there we go.
so this is the power of Vite. You can like just script src or TypeScript or a TSX file, and it just works.
This is pretty slick. Like, pretty happy to see how quickly all of that came together.
Yeah, and so up until now, if anyone has used Vite, they're just gonna say that, okay, what's new here? This is just Vite, right? So we're gonna like carry on this trajectory for a little bit. Let's bring in, I don't know, React. So we can npm install React, React DOM, types React DOM as well. And let's also install the Vite plugin for React, which is at vitejs/plugin-react. Yeah. So we're gonna that's it.
Okay.
So now we're gonna hop over to app.config.ts.
I had those all configured so fast. Okay. So
Yeah. Yeah. When we have like npm install that installs like 20 dependencies, obviously like it's gonna be slow, but yeah. So yeah, let's import our Vite plugin React here.
Okay, and remind me, is that a named?
Just a default. Yeah, we can
Default,
call it like React plugin or React refresh or anything.
From Vite plugin React.
So now that we have like the more important aspect of a router, which is that each router has a plugins property, and which means each router has like an independent pipeline of plugins that you provide to it. So yeah, React plugin as a function, and this whole thing is a function itself. So plugins is going to be a function that returns that array instead of just that array. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, each router is going to have like its independent build pipeline, which is a little different from like a regular Vite app, because in a normal Vite app, you just have one Vite bundle, right? But the key kind of, I guess, insight behind Vinxi is that you never have just one Vite bundle or one Vite application. You always have like different routers or like different, I guess, parts of your application that can be bundled separately. Like you don't necessarily need to have just one bundle for the whole thing, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
And so just to like disambiguate here a little bit, because somebody was talking about not knowing the difference between Nitro, Vinxi, Analog,
Okay.
Vite, etc. What we're getting out of Vinxi here is almost Vite, because like Vite is going to have the same concept. Like these are Vite plugins, obviously. The difference is that in Vinxi, I'm specifying routers, which is not a Vite concept.
No.
And so I'm able to basically do multiple Vite setups inside of one project by using this routers concept.
Correct. Yeah.
Got
so Vinxi is a layer that sits on top of both Vite and Nitro that orchestrates everything. So in this case, it orchestrates that there's going to be one single page application router, which means that whatever your HTML or whatever handler you point it to, it's going to take that, bundle it as a single page application, and serve it.
Got it. Okay, so then I'm gonna do the thing where I set up my root, right? And then what happens?
And then you go in your TypeScript file. You can just create root from. If you just type create root, it should.
Oops, create root.
Yeah, React DOM client. Yes. So here you just document get element by ID. Get your root element here.
We called it root.
You can remove the hash from here.
Oh, that's right.
Because it's already by ID. Yeah. And you don't pass a second parameter anymore. They changed how that works. Yeah, you do a dot render at the end. And here you pass in whatever your app or just some JSX. You can just do div or h1 or anything like that.
Okay, so let's start by just doing the hi from React. Okay, what are you mad about? Leave me alone.
You probably need to import React from React at the top.
Nah, just
for that.
TypeScript thinks that this might not exist, so I'm just telling it to hush. Now,
that's the one I was talking about.
Oh, this one is the one you were talking about. Okay, so import React.
I'm pretty sure there's some other like TypeScript configuration that solves it, but this is the easier one for now.
Yeah. Because we don't have a TS config or anything set up. So if we were to like set up TypeScript and extend the React rules and stuff, then it would auto detect and all those good things. But who cares?
Exactly,
Not me. Let's go back out here. And I need to start it again.
Yeah.
And it says, what up? We're running React now.
Yeah, we now have a React app. And we can like make a to-do app or anything like that. Let's actually like just we can make a counter at least, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to do it in the same component or?
We can do let's do a new component.
Okay, so we're gonna call this one counter.tsx, and inside this we'll like export const counter equals, and this one's gonna have, what do we need? Like count, set count equals use state, and we'll start it at 0, and then we're gonna return, I guess just a button.
Just a button is fine.
And we'll do an on click. That's going to set count. And we'll do the like, I think that's the the responsible set count, right? And then we're going to show the count. Okay.
Might need to import React from React again.
Right. Oh wait. Just do it out here.
Nice.
Okay, so then in our index, I'm going to import counter from counter, and then we'll change this, into a fragment.
Yeah.
Move this out here, and we'll drop our counter in. And assuming I remember how React works, this should just function.
There we go. Yeah.
Look at it go, everybody. Okay.
Yeah, so
All
we
right.
have a React and Vite app now. You can bring in anything that's supported in Vite, which is pretty much the entire universe,
Mm-hmm.
um, and anything that's supported in React, which is also a pretty big universe, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was obviously for a framework. We're not going to stop at that point. So I'm gonna kind of hand it to you now. Like, what do you think a framework should be doing? What else would you see in your framework? We can add some data fetching. We can add some file system routing, like all of these things that fancy frameworks have that we like to have it on.
Yeah, I think. I mean, probably the first one I would think about is the data fetching.
Data fetching. Okay, cool.
So, like,
So,
I would want if we pseudo code this up, right? Like,
mhm,
let's say we'll call it a post list, and from here I would like export default or export const post list, and that's going to be like, how would this work? We would do it. I don't know. Maybe we get one of these, and then we put one of these in here, and then we would say like posts map,
mhm,
and for each one of these we would want to output a li with a key of post ID, and then we would want the post title, right?
cool.
And so
Yeah.
we want to be able to then load posts. And let me import React from React up here so that it stops yelling. Okay.
Cool.
And so
So you want to fetch from a server, from an API endpoint?
I think from an API endpoint, because if I remember correctly, I should have API episodes, and we can just grab some titles out of this.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll just be able to grab the titles out of this. So I want to be able to fetch from that URL.
Okay. Cool.
So
let's create our own API.
Yeah, let's create our own API. So like, I would say, okay, yeah, let's create our own API.
Yeah.
Tell me how we do that.
So let's hop onto our app.config, our config file, and we're going to add a new router this time.
Okay.
Because the whole point is that you can add multiple routers, and that's how you compose your application. So this time we're going to do an HTTP router. Okay. So now we have two different types of router: a SPA router that just delivers a single page app with JavaScript, and now we have an API. So we can give this like src api.ts or ts, something like that. And let's make it /. So the handler is going to be a TypeScript file this time.
Got it.
So okay, I mean the handler can be ./src/api.ts or something like that.
API.ts. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I got.
We can create this file in a minute. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So now we can create this file, and this is going to be our API handler.
Okay, API.ts.
Yeah, and now here we're using Nitro. So as soon as we enter a server environment, we are now using Nitro because that's our server runtime. That's what powers our server. And the way you create endpoints with Nitro is just export default event handler. And event handler, yeah, from Vinxi HTTP. Now this is going to take an event object, which is going to have your request. So it's going to take a function. Sorry.
Oh, a function.
Yeah, the function's parameter would be an event object. You can remove the curly braces. It's just event.
Oh, it's just event. Oh, yeah. I got it. I understand.
Yeah, and now here you can try to like console log anything about the event that you might be interested in. You can console log event.path or just a whole event, and you can return anything from here that you want.
Okay, so this looks like it's doing what I want.
Yeah, so let's just like hit /API/ yeah, let's return something.
Okay, so it's testing.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Now we need to add one more thing. So go back to your Vinxi app config. So right now we have two different routers, but they're both going to conflict with each other, right? So
Right.
for the second router, we need to add an additional property called base. So base, we can say /API. So now, only if you go to /API, we're going to hit the API router. Otherwise, we're just going to serve the SPA router.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What is that?
I love it when it does that. Just
What?
go to /. I don't know why that
Excuse me.
happened.
Excuse me. What are you doing, bro?
Just go to /API/something else. /test. Okay. So this is, I think this might be like an issue or bug or something, but like when you have a base URL, you need to add something else after it.
Got it.
For it to work.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, so now we have our API. And obviously, once we have this API, we can bring in any sort of a routing library here that we want. We can just say that if event.path equals posts, and if event.method is get, then return this posts object or something. Like that's our dummy endpoint, right?
Let's do one of these, event.method. Then we'll do path equals event.request.
Just event.path.
Oh, it's just event.path.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we can, we'll say if it's get, if method equals get, so that way we don't have to set a post. And the path equals, we'll say posts. And is it going to include the slash?
It's not. We can also check that. Yeah, but it doesn't include this. Oh, it doesn't include the /API. It's gonna include the slash. Yeah.
The slash post. Okay,
yeah.
great.
I thought you were asking about the API.
And then we'll do, I guess for now, we'll get const result will be await fetch, and then I had in here that API.
Nice.
And then,
this isn't an async function yet. We can make it that.
Oh right, we should.
Add the inside the event handler.
There it is.
Right there.
I was like, I know this is in here.
It's JavaScript
wait, is this
confusing a little.
Function or a const or what?
So the event handler is like it's just a wrapper. Like it's what defines kind of what an endpoint is.
Oh, I guess I've never seen that you could just export this. I always thought you had to make it a function or a const or something.
If you have like export, if you have a named export, you have to do that. But for default exports, you don't need to store it in a variable.
Got it. Okay, cool. Very cool.
So it's the same thing we did in app.config.
Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing here where we'll just do one of those.
Sure.
And otherwise, we will, data will be await res.json, and then we can return
just the data.
Do we even need?
You don't need to stringify it.
Just return it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Nitro takes care of all of that.
That's slick. So now if I go to posts,
did it? There we go. Okay, it took a while.
Yeah, that API is not the fastest because it doesn't cache when I hit it directly.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, now we can go into a React app, commit a horrible sin by fetching in a use effect, and we have our working application.
Okay, so let's get our use effect, and we're going to we'll set that, and then we're also going to get our posts and set posts and put them into use state. We'll just make that an array by default. This is gonna be grumpy at me and whatever. Or no, that would loop it, right? If I did it that way, it would just do it.
Yeah, that would be an empty array.
So now I can just hit it the same way I did in here, right?
Yeah.
But I'll hit our own API endpoint.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna get this.
This cannot be async though.
Oh, right. So I have to do my async function, get posts, and we'll put all of this in here.
The good old way of doing this. Up until we get access to react.use.
Yeah. And then we'll call get posts. All right. And then down here, we're going to set posts as data. And then we need to update this to be API posts, but that's not going to work because you need a full URL.
It's the same. It's the same origin, so this should work. So it's
Oh,
also
will it
like
work?
on localhost 3000. Yeah. So if you don't give it a full origin, it just uses your existing origin.
Okay. And then we have
now we need to render it.
Use the thingy yet. What's it mad about? You're mad about
It
these
doesn't
because
know
you're
what
not sure if
types
they
it
don't
is.
exist. That's okay. We'll ignore that.
Yeah.
And we're going to get in here, import our post list, and we're just going to drop that right in here.
Cool.
Okay.
There we go.
And holy buckets, there they are, the first
Perfect.
100 episodes or so.
Nice.
This is slick. This is really slick.
Yeah, and this is kind of where, this is kind of, at least for me, where I start realizing the power that I have access to everything. Like I have API routes, I have my single page app. I can just bring in whatever libraries I need. I don't need to buy into a fully packaged framework and its opinions on how I should do data fetching or how I should do routing, and stick to that. Like from this point on, we can bring in TanStack query, we can bring in any sort of router that we want, and we have an API endpoint, so we can put in any routing kind of library there, like bring an express router, even though that's a bad idea, but any sort of, like the only thing we need to do on the API endpoint file now is that matching, that here's the request method, here's the request path, which handler am I supposed to call? Like now if I send a get post with ID, you cannot obviously just look at it like this. You need some sort of a regular expression matching to figure out what handler to call. But that's the only missing piece here. I'm not bringing an entire framework like Express to build an API. I have everything in here to do whatever I need.
Yeah, and for a lot of like, especially when you get into smaller projects, you don't like. I know what my endpoints are going to be. I've got 3 of them, right? Right? Like I don't need lots of flexibility there. So bringing in a bunch of just in case code, it to me always feels like a liability because now I got to update all my deps and like some of those times you get the minor update that causes some weird peer dep incompatibility problem, and now it's like I burned 5 hours updating an app that I'm not even using that dependency. I just needed it so that I could do wildcard matching in my routes. That's silly.
Yeah. So yeah, it gives you like the entire spectrum of possibilities from here.
Yeah.
But now like, okay, let's go with the possibility that we do need it. So let's bring in a router now, because routing is kind of like a very fundamental part of like pretty much any applications, any web application really. And we can use like React router is obviously the big one, but we can go minimal and we can go with Wouter. So WOUTER. So it's kind of like React. That's it. That's the only package you need to install. So it's kind of inspired by React Router, but it's like it does very little work. And all we need here is we can import route and link from Wouter. You can import it pretty much anywhere. Wouter, yeah. And now we can put our 2 counter and post lists. We can like put them under routes. So like maybe if route is home, you have the counter component, and if the route is posts, you have it under post list.
Okay, so I do route.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to have another one. So
you can give it a path.
We've got our path, and our path is going to be home.
Yeah. And you can give it a component.
I set a component, and my component is...
You can also just pass children. So instead of making it a self-closing tag, like instead of making route a self-closing tag.
Oh, slick.
Yeah,
okay, that's actually way better. Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. And
then we can have
this one we'll set up as route path posts. And we'll drop this down here.
Yeah. And we can add a link somewhere just so that we can navigate from one to the other. Because right now
what we want. Okay. And then we'll set up a nav up here. Do a link. Is it a 2 href?
2, yeah. It's a 2, yeah.
And then we'll say home. Then we'll duplicate that. And we'll get one for posts.
Perfect. There we go.
Look at us go, everyone.
So yeah,
Like,
any
this is
router
pretty
that you
incredible.
want. Yeah. Any router that you want to bring in time stack router so you get like full type safety and all of that, you can do that. You want to just stay completely minimal, you can do this. Or if at one point we can have some sort of a server component router, you can bring that in. But again, like the framework doesn't limit you to a single routing library or a single way to do routing, data fetching. Just bring in whatever you want, right?
So Oliver has the same question I have, which is, are we able to just deploy this? Like, I can just ship this to Netlify, to Vercel, to whatever, and it'll just work? Or what's left to make this go to production?
Yeah, it uses Nitro. So anywhere that you can deploy Nitro, you can deploy this, which is everywhere.
Just about everywhere. Yeah.
Literally everywhere. Yeah. That's the whole point of Nitro, is that it gives you a standardized set of tools that work everywhere. Vercel, Cloudflare, self-hosted, Netlify, whatever you want. That can go everywhere. That also means that Vinxi doesn't necessarily have to maintain a bunch of adapters. Or you as a framework author don't have to maintain a bunch of adapters. This is like one of the biggest pain points for anyone building a framework.
I mean, and this is, I think, like, this is why I think I got so excited about this kind of like Vite Nitro revolution, is that suddenly every framework, I think the only framework at this point that doesn't have either an adapter layer or auto deploy is Next, for obvious reasons. And so like you're like, oh, I want to use SvelteKit. Where do I deploy it? Wherever the hell I want. And it just works and all the features are there. And so knowing that I can do the same thing with my little custom meta framework that I'm building on Vinxi, it just feels nice, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm having to relearn how everything works. If I'm coming from the world, like, I feel like we live in a bubble on Twitter where everybody uses Next or Svelte or something like that, but so many of us are still using Create React App. And coming from a Create React App world where every decision that we made was a home rolled, we had to figure out what our opinions were, all those things, being able to just transition that over into a Vinxi meta framework where suddenly we get things like API routes, SSR, so on and so forth, that is way more palatable than having to relearn how to write React in the Next way, or how to write React in the, I guess Remix had a few fewer opinions, but like, or back in the day, the Gatsby way, before Gatsby kind of stopped being, like you had to relearn this whole world in order to adopt the framework. I haven't felt like I'm relearning very much here. Like, I'm just writing React the way that I would always write React. I up to and including, I'm just doing the React mount thing, and it just works. So let's take this a little bit further. I want to be mindful of time. We got about 35 minutes left.
Okay.
I would love to get so there's another question here with an actual router where you can do like data loading and rendering. So there are three things that I'm interested in here. One is file-based routing. One is like a data loader, kind of SSR style data loading, and the third one is the React server component stuff, because I know that we were kind of talking about those. Yeah. What else? Is there anything that's not in that list that you really wanted to get to today?
Yeah, let's actually do server functions, because it's actually super quick.
Okay, let's do it.
We literally need to install like one package. We need to install, because of this kind of like Vinxi router setup, a lot of these capabilities like server functions become like, okay, install this and add these plugins in two places and you have it. So let's install at Vinxi /server functions.
At
Vinxi
server
functions. Yes.
Okay.
Let's install this, and in our configuration, in our app.config, we need to add a new plugin to our client. So in that plugins array, we can say server functions .client. It doesn't know that it's a thing yet. So we'll need to import server functions from the package we just installed.
Get out of here. Okay.
It probably doesn't have type definitions properly. So server functions from Vinxi server functions /plugin. So we also need to add that.
Okay.
And server functions is inside curly braces, so it's a named export.
Whoops.
Yeah.
There we go.
And the one more thing that we need to add is we need to add a new router, but we're not going to create an object. We are just going to say, like at the bottom of that array, just say server functions.router. So this is like a full .router. Yeah, it probably does have type defs. So this is like a fully built router that this package just provides you. And this is another nice thing that you can do. So now we have server function support. Wait, can you scroll down? Did you? So the .router is a function, so you need to call that.
Okay.
So every time like a package like this gives you a router, you can it can expose additional configuration.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, so we could like change where like how it configures things.
Yeah, but now we can just now we have use server, so we can, instead of like reaching to an API endpoint, we can just mark a function as use server. We can do server code in there, and we can call it in a React app.
So if I do this,
not this way. Like you have just a function.
Got it. Okay, so
you cannot like have components from your user. We don't have server components yet.
Got it.
But
so I do
here
something
you can
like this,
mark it as use server.
and then we could just kind of follow the same little bit here. We'll use server, and then down here I'm going to export function get posts and run this same async function.
Yeah. You can just put a console log in here so that we know it's running on the server. Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
let's use this inside our use effect instead of the API endpoint.
Okay. And so we're going to data here, and we're going to await get posts, which
we might need to rename this function here because we have two get posts now.
Right. Let's. Oops.
Sure.
Okay, and then we should hopefully get autocomplete there. We do.
Yeah.
And let's try it again.
Let's see if we still get our posts.
And there it is.
We do. And do we see our console log?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So here's the front end. No console. Let me clear, reload. There we go. All right. So
no console
log here, but there is a console log here. So we're server side.
Yeah. So literally in 2 lines of code, we now have use server. We now have this capability that like maybe 2 other frameworks have.
That's pretty slick. That's actually really impressive that just works like that. And this is, and this is kind of exactly how I would want to think about it is if I want to extract something out, because I know that, for example, this call is, running on the same servers that my backend is deployed to, that's going to be a much faster API call.
Or you can like talk to a database in here where you can access process.env, you can anything that you want.
Good point. Very good point. Okay. Yeah. So if we need, secret credentials or things like that, that would be very, very cool. Could you even bring a framework like Nest? Sounds like there's no rules, right?
Yeah. I mean, you could. I don't see why you would, but yeah.
Fair.
I think it's also that we are kind of using Nitro, which is almost an alternative to things like Express or Next or Nest. So like Nitro gives us all the capabilities that we want from Nest. Really, the only thing that you would want from Nest here is kind of its dependency injection mechanism, which sure, you can bring that in, but you wouldn't necessarily need its own HTTP runtime. You would just need all the libraries that come with Nest. Right?
Got it.
So this acts as our framework, but all the other capabilities just become libraries.
Yeah. Slick. Very, very cool. Okay, so we got so far we've been able to get single page app React rendering going. We were able to get an API route. We were able to set up server side rendering of the use server setup
functions.
here.
Yeah.
Server functions. What else? Now what?
Well, we already have a router. We already have a simple React router. We can add file system routing and make this feel like a proper framework.
Let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to create a pages folder, and I want to make this work. We'll call this index.tsx, and I want to export default, or is it default? Does it matter?
Yeah, we can export default. That's fine. So because we are building the framework, we have full control over how and what we export.
Or export default, we'll do one of these, and we'll return one of those.
Yeah.
And I want to make that live, and I guess I got to import my React up here. I'm realizing now how spoiled I am by not having to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a time when we all had to do that. Okay.
Back in the day when you had to import your framework.
Yeah, and we were not using TypeScript, so we didn't even know that until we tried to run it.
Indeed.
Cool. So the file system routing is like almost a third kind of router that we have. So far, we have used two different kinds of router. We have a Vinxi router, which takes a set of URLs and points them to a specific JavaScript bundle or a JavaScript kind of application, either a client app or a server app. And here's the handler, here's the build system for it, right? Actually, while we're here, let's also quickly add a third kind of router, which is a static router, which will let's say we have a public folder or an assets folder. We probably want to serve some sort of public images, right? We can call it static assets or whatever. And I think, let me quickly check this. I don't think we give it a handler. I think we give it like a base, a directory, dir. So we give it a directory, and we say that, you can say .public, and now everything that's in the public folder is going to be served statically. So we also have this. I just wanted to quickly talk about this before we go too far.
Got it. And so if I do some, what would be easier? Okay, I've got some images in here. Let's take one of these and just call it hat so I can type it faster. And now if I come in here and I say image source equals, would it just be hat?
Yeah, I think so.
Do alt equals hat, and we'll just set a width and a height so that it doesn't blow our entire layout. In theory, there it is. Look at that.
Yeah, so assets folder, it's just a router. You can put it wherever you want.
Okay.
So yeah, this was like one kind of router, which is let's point it to a specific kind of server or an application or an assets router. And then we had a React router, or this is like what we can call a runtime router, or a router that runs at request, at runtime, either on your server, which is going to look at your request method and on your API server and decide what handler to call, or on your React application, it's going to look at the browser URL and decide what React component to render, right? Now we're going to have a third kind of router, which is like, okay, we're going to take this URL and point to a specific file in our folder, right? So now we can import, let's import from Vinxi/fs router. We're gonna have a class here called base file system router. Yeah. So we're gonna import base.
Camel case like this.
Yeah, there we go. And we are going to create a class here. So class something extends base file system router.
Okay.
Whatever you want to call it, like your router.
Yeah, we'll call it extends.
File router, sure.
Base file system router.
Yeah. So this is our file system router. It's going to have two methods. It's going to have a toPath. toPath and toRoute. So the src here is the name of the file.
Got it.
Right. What we need to do is take this file name and transform it into like a URL pattern that we can tell Vinxi that, okay, this is the URL pattern that's handled by this file.
Got it.
So for that, we're going to, should I copy paste you the code? Okay, we'll just walk through it.
Sure.
We need another import from Vinxi FS router called clean path.
Okay.
There we go. And we're going to pass in the src here and this .config as a second argument. So we're going to take like at some point this object is going to have the configuration that we need. We're going to pass this in, and what this will return is so like the src right now is the absolute URL to your files, right? This clean path is going to return, like it's going to remove all the file system stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So for your index.tsx, it's only going to return /index instead of the entire like path to your file system with the .tsx.
Got it.
So from this, we are going to do .slice, where we need to remove the initial slash, slice 1, and we replace index with an empty string, because if it's an index.tsx, that's a default path. So you can replace, yeah. Let's just, we're going to have one more thing. I'm going to copy you this part because it's like a weird regular expression. Can you put it in the chat here?
Yeah, should work.
Okay. So yeah, that's the final replace call that adds a little bit of dynamic routing. The regular expression is too much for me to just talk about.
Okay.
I can remove.
Let's figure out what I did wrong here.
There's comments in there. Wait, let me send you that again, because the comments didn't translate with the new lines.
Oh, I gotcha.
Properly.
Okay,
that should be better.
Just dump all this, drop it in again, and here we go. All right, so now we get, we're checking for if it starts with a slash.
So we're basically like removing square brackets. So we're using square brackets for.
This would be if we're doing like parameters.
Correct. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
So the first one, the ... is like a catch-all route, and so if it's a catch-all route, we return like we slice the first 3, which is the first 3 dots.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not a catch-all route, we just put this is a route parameter, right? So this replace expression just looks for square brackets, and if there are no square brackets, it doesn't do anything, right?
Got it.
Now we can return. Now we can return the path, but now we need to add an initial slash to it. Path, yeah. So this is our 2 path. This is like probably the more complicated part. The second method, toRoute. So we're going to use the this.to path to get the path first. So const path equals, yeah, we're going to pass this src, and we're going to take the return value. So that this is our path, and we return an object. We're going to use this object very soon, but we can create a property, let's say $component. So this is, I'm kind of like just copy pasting what I have and what we're going to be using soon. This is an object.
Okay.
And this is going to have src. So we just take that src and pass it back in.
Okay.
Yeah, and the second property is a pick. And this is an array. So pick now tells the bundler. It tells Vinxi what do we care about in the file. So let's pass it a default as a string. This part gets a little weird, but now we are saying that take the default export from this file. And put it under $component.
So we could, if we wanted to, we could make it like you have to export a named thing, and that's what we would pick. So if we wanted to grab, say, a loader or things like that, we could grab all those pieces. Yeah.
So you would have a second property that would be a $dollar loader, and that would be pick loader. So you can have as many of them as you want.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
And then we are going to have 2 more things in this object. outside that. The component is done. Now outside the component, we're going to have the path, which we got from, and we have the file path, which is just the src. So that's pretty much, now this is like a very basic, it has a little bit of dynamic routing. And also if you want to do, so for loaders and things, we configure the toRoute method, right? If you want to have named exports. And if you want to have things like layouts and pages, like Next.js has a layout.tsx and page.tsx, you can do that in your toPath. So basically the point here is that you can have whatever file routing convention that you want, as long as you can express it in these two methods. You can replicate Next.js, SvelteKit, Remix, Nuxt, whatever you want. Like it's all just configuration here, and it's all completely pluggable into everything.
That's really cool. Okay, so to repeat this back to make sure that I understand, what's happening is we're getting basically the file path here. We are using a helper out of Vinxi to strip that down to just the immediate path, getting rid of like the my system file path and everything. We drop the leading slash. We swap out index for nothing because it's the default root. And then we check for any route parameters like square brackets ID or something. And then we return that back. And then in the toRoute, we are saying, based on this path, use the current component, get the default export. That's what the component is going to be. We could configure the loader and other things in here. And then we specify the path and where that is. Great. So then to use this,
now we can go down to our Vinxi configuration. So we have our single page app router, a SPA router. We have type, name, handler, plugins. We're gonna give it a routes property after plugins. So this is where this is a function. This function, it takes two parameters. The function itself, routes. It has a router and an app. So the router is this router itself, and the app is the entire application. And we can return new pages router, or sorry, new file router. And this takes in 3 arguments. The first is an object. And then after the object, you just pass in router and app. So as a second and third parameter. Right. So now inside the object, you give it a directory. So this is the directory where your file routing lives.
And we're going to call that source pages.
Yes. Now this is expecting, we can also give it extensions. So here are the file extensions that you need to look for. We only have TSX, but you can add JS, JSX, TS, TSX to cover everything.
And is this like globby? Could I do something like that?
No, you just have multiple strings.
Got it. Okay.
It might be globby. That's the bundler part is something like I don't fully understand yet. I just copy and paste from, and you can remove the dot. It's just TSX.
Remove the dot. It's just extensions. Got it.
Yeah. And for directory, I believe it looks for absolute paths. So here we can import another helper from Vinxi called resolve. From Vinxi, second one. And we can say resolve.absolute. That's the resolve.absolute is the method. We pass in src pages and the second parameter, which is router.root. So from take the root path of why is it complaining?
What are you mad about? Expected 2 arguments, we got 1. That's a lie.
No. Now that's complaining. We can just
string.
set a TypeScript there. So take the root of the current router, which is the SPA router, and go to src pages and convert that into an absolute URL, right?
Okay.
So that's the configuration. This is it for the bundler configuration. We still need to have now at runtime, we need we haven't changed our actual application code yet at all, right?
Right.
So, but right now, if you run this, nothing everything should still work as expected, as it was running up until now, right? And if you go to post, that's still there. Okay. So now we have the runtime part. We need to add one more install one more package, which is at Vinxi/React, which is again a small helper that Vinxi has built to like make working with React a little easier.
At Vinxi/React.
/React, yes, that's it.
Got it. Okay.
And now we can go to our index, index.tsx file right there. Yeah. In here, let me quickly find it. Okay. So now we need to first, So from here, we're going to import lazy route because now we also want our routes to be lazy loaded. That was kind of like the big point behind going to file system routing in the first place, is because we were trying to lazy load everything. And we're going to import get manifest from Vinxi/manifest. So we don't need to import anything from here. Yeah. You can remove those three. So manifest is something that Vinxi builds after it's done building everything, and this is how you request Vinxi for information about all the bundles that it has built, right?
Okay.
And the final thing we need to import is file routes from Vinxi/routes. So import it's a default export file routes from Vinxi/routes. So this is let's try just console logging file routes right here and see what we get. Let's go to our app, pull up the console. Okay, right now it's empty. Why is that empty?
I do have like conflicting.
Oh, we don't have, we didn't but we did export something from pages, right?
We exported it, but we're not doing anything.
Let's go to our app.config, and in the extensions, let's add JS, JSX, TS, CSX. Let's add all of them because it might be like some sort of a build issue. TS and JS. Let's see if that works. Okay, there we go. So here's a route. Whatever we returned from toRoute, we now have access to that at runtime. So we can dynamically import that. We have like pretty much like whatever build configuration that we added there.
Oh, fascinating. Okay, so I have my, let me get back out here. So we have our file routes, and our file routes give us that component, and that component I could then insert wherever I want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to do one more thing with file routes. We're going to create a new, let's do const routes equals file routes.map, something. We're going to map it over and get something else out of it. Let's return an object.
Okay.
So this it will have everything the same. It'll have all, you can do a dot route.
Whoops, this one.
But what we
oh my god,
that's it. Yeah,
I'll
and what we want to do here, cool. And we want to have a component property here, which will have the actual component. So component without the $sign, and here we're going to use lazy route here from React. So now we want to take like the dynamic import function that we have and turn it into an actual React component.
Okay,
it expects two more. No, it expects two more parameters. So the second one is just going to be it just wants access to the manifest. So the second is going to be get manifest that we imported from Vinxi manifest, and we pass in client as a string. So get manifest is like you can request the manifest for any router that you have. So the client is what we named a router in configuration.
Got it.
Right. You can pass get manifest client again. So lazy route is meant for to be used during SSR. So you give it both the client and the server manifests, but we don't have SSR yet.
I got it. So we're going only.
Yeah.
All right, I'm with you. So then we got our routes.
And now you can have this in your application as you can do routes.map, and you can have these route components from it. So you have route
I
path equals
see.
/
Okay.
Now let's
Yeah. So I
let's
would
add
want
curly braces. Yeah.
routes.map route.
Yeah.
And for each of these, we're going to do a route path equals, and it's going to be route.path.
Yep.
And then the component.
And you just component is route.component.
Oh, that's slick.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason we did the other dot map outside the component is because if we do it inside the component, it's going to run it every single time it re-renders, which obviously we don't want. But yeah, so we mapped all of our like build outputs to a React component. Lazy route just uses React.lazy under the hood.
And so now we can
and you cannot add all the links.
We'll do route.path. And what we don't have that we didn't figure out was what we would actually call these. So we'd have to put that into our setup.
Yeah. And that's another thing that, okay, maybe if you want auto-generated navigation, you can just export a name or a title from your page, and you can use that here. So you can like build all of these fancy things in your framework. But right now you only have /. And we can just start adding new routes.
Did I save this?
Okay, let's. There we go. So now one more thing that we need to add is we need to fix the route matching. So the way Vouter does its route matching is different from how Vinxi is going to do it. So we need to wrap our routes with a top level router component. That's kind of like, it's like a context provider. We need to actually wrap the entire application because links need to be under it as well. So both the links and the routes. So in Vouter, this is an optional component. Like if you're using React Router, you're going to need to add this, but Vouter makes it optional. And we need to pass it a parser. We need to create like a parser function. I'm also going to like just put that in the chat here for time's sake. But basically, what we are doing is we are telling Vouter that here is how you're going to match your routes. And you can import path to regex from path to regex. It's already installed. Yeah, second one. Wait, no. You can add an import at the top. It probably doesn't recognize it. It should be from
FS
path.
Router.
No, it's from path to regex. So,
from path to regex?
Yeah. Path -2 -regexp. Yeah, it's already installed. It's just probably not recognized by TypeScript.
Is that like a peer dependency of Vinxi?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
It probably recognized that it's just convert path to regex. So you can give Vouter like a custom way to map a route to an actual handler.
Got it.
And this is what we're going to do here.
Did I do this right? Just passing it in as the parser?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now that about should work.
And it does. Got to figure out what I did wrong here because it works on reload.
We have something in the console.
Component suspended while responding.
Oh, we need to wrap it with suspense, of course. Because we are using lazy route. So just wrap the top level with suspense. Like the whole thing.
Level?
Yeah. I keep forgetting about that part. Yeah, because the lazy route function uses react.lazy under the hood. And
got it.
We need suspense to handle its throwing a promise.
This is dope.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been able to put quite a bit together in here, and then we could even do, we could do something. I don't know if we would want to do this, but something like this.
Yeah. So you have like both file routes and config routes if you want.
Yeah, and then I could do custom.
Yeah, that also works.
Wow. So you can, I mean, you could cause yourself a lot of pain with that sort of thing, but like, it is pretty dope that this just works.
Yeah, and we can like replicate that with our API routes if we want, so that we also get the same file-based routing for API endpoints instead of just the front end. But we don't have to do that right now. Like it will look very similar. Like we got the file routes from Vinxi/file routes, and we just need to transform it over. Like in this case, we want to pass it to lazy route so that we can make it a lazy loaded React component instead of just a lazy import. And then we can just build a router out of it.
Really, really slick.
And again, this is completely decoupled from what routing library you're using. So here we're using router. You want to bring in TanStack router, you want to bring React router, you want to bring anything else.
It doesn't matter because
matter.
we're just doing that. We're just passing in a component.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice. So Dev, that's all the time we have for building today.
Yeah.
I have a million.
The file routing takes a bit, yeah.
But this is slick that we were able to get this done. But so we see here that there is a possibility to set up SSR. You mentioned that you can take this further, get React Server components going.
Yeah.
Anything else that we can do with this that we didn't already talk about?
Let me quickly add in two links here if I can find them. Oh, there we go. So I have a couple blog posts here that another person who was building with Vinxi or who was excited with Vinxi, he wrote about like how to build a React meta framework, and he has like SSR and server components. He explains that because like we weren't able to get to that here. But we did. But what he doesn't talk about in the blog post is like file routes and API routes and the stuff that we did. So I think it's like a good like jumping off point from where we are leaving off today.
Yeah, this is very cool. And also coincidentally, I've known Brenly for like years and years and years. So it's super cool to see his work coming in here. So
yeah, he's
all right,
amazing.
y'all. This was very cool. I'm gonna go ahead and concur with Fuzzy here that this was a one of a kind stream. I can't believe how much we got done. Just kind of looking at, like, I know that at the end here we pulled some of the stuff out to do the file-based routing, but this is really cool that we were able to build all of this with what we probably wrote. Here's 45 lines of code there. We got another 20, at least just under 200 lines of code, right?
Yeah, and a lot of it is already like, it's kind of unnecessary because things like the SPA router, the API router, like a lot of that can just be, like a lot of this code exists in every single Vinxi framework. So Vinxi actually abstracts this out. Like it has its own like kind of set of libraries that you can use to just bring in an API router or bring in like API endpoints with file system routing. Like how simply we got server functions running. You can get that same experience for API or for React or even for Remix or for like different file system conventions. So all of these different aspects of a framework that you might think like, okay, this is inherent to this framework. In a Vinxi world, it just becomes a library that you bring in, that a plugin.
That's pretty cool stuff. All right, so let me do one more quick shout out. This episode, like every episode, has been live captioned. So I'm just gonna throw that link up there one more time. This is where you can go if you wanna see those. That's been done by Amanda, who's been hanging out with us all day. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda, from White Coat Captioning. That's sponsored by Netlify. So thank you very much, Netlify, for making the show a little more accessible. We've been hanging out with Dev. Make sure you go and give Dev a follow if you want to see more of those. M. Huggins asking if I'm going to refactor LWJ. Absolutely not. But this was a lot of fun, and I do see some opportunities to play. Let me drop another link to Vinxi in here. You can see that in the chat. Another shout out to Nikhil for putting this all together. And one last note that I'll make is while you're checking out things on the site here, go look at the schedule because we've got so much good stuff coming up. I will be back on Tuesday, probably doing some live coding, and then I'll be out next Thursday because Chain React is happening and I'm going to be at the event. The week after that, though, we're going to learn how to put videos behind auth. I'm really excited about this. It's like a user-only video viewer that you can build onto your website. Really, really excited to learn how that works. Then we're bringing on the man, the myth, the legend, Matt Pocock, who is going to teach us about TypeScript generics. We've also got Sarah Vieira coming on the show to teach us 3D and how we can put 3D assets onto our websites. That one's going to be up on the website soon. And if there's somebody you want to see on the show, somebody you want to learn about, make sure you join the Learn with Jason Discord. There's a button for it right there where you can come in and tell me what you want to learn and who you want to learn it from. With that, Dev, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Any parting words for everybody before we call this one done?
Go build your own frameworks, experiment with capabilities and your own opinions instead of buying into packaged opinions. It's fun.
Yeah, I think even if you're not going to use it for everything, go and learn how it works, because I feel like having that understanding of how all these pieces fit together makes such a big difference in your ability to get, you just do better work with the tools that are already packaged up for you. Dev, this was great. Thank you so much. And a little teaser for everybody. You're going to see Dev again soon on my channel. So stay buckled up, and we will talk to you next time. Later, y'all.